The commander's voice cracked over the radio with three words no one ever wants to hear. Evacuate right now. But 17 sets of eyes looked back at the flames, and then they ran toward them. Captain Brooklyn Hayes stood at the edge of Bagram Airfield, her hand frozen on the transport gate latch, watching what should have been impossible. The military working dogs were doing the one thing they'd never been trained to do. They were disobeying a direct evacuation order, and they were running back into an inferno. Before I tell you what happened in those next impossible minutes, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this story needs to be heard everywhere. The fire had started in Hangar, 7 just after 040 hours. What began as an electrical malfunction became a roaring beast within minutes, fed by jet fuel residue and desert wind. The evacuation alarm screamed through the pre-dawn darkness. Get the dogs. Get out. Standard protocol. 23 military working dogs were stationed there, each one trained for years. Each one a living weapon and companion rolled into fur and loyalty. Brooklyn had served with these dogs for 3 years. She knew their quirks, their fears, their favorite spots to sleep. Maverick, the lead explosive detection dog, always tilted his head left when confused. Stella, the patrol specialist, whimpered in her sleep. Dakota, the oldest at 9 years, limped slightly on cold mornings, but never failed to complete a mission. The extraction team moved fast. Leashes snapped on. Dogs herded toward transport vehicles. The heat was already blistering, smoke pouring across the compound in thick black waves. Brooklyn grabbed 6 leads herself, her hands shaking as she counted heads. 21, 22, 23. Everyone accounted for Dot, and then the wind shifted Dot. It happened in a heartbeat, a violent gust that sent a wall of flame leaping. Across the fire break, straight toward the kennels on the eastern side. The backup kennels. The ones that should have been empty, except they weren't. Through the smoke, Brooklyn saw movement. A shape, small and low to the ground, darting between buildings. Then another, and another. Her blood went cold. The puppies. 8-week-old Belgian Malinois pups. 17 of them, born just 2 months ago. They've been scheduled for transport to the main facility tomorrow. Tomorrow. One day that now might as well have been a lifetime away. The radio exploded with Commander Jackson Price's voice. All personnel to the evac zone. NO, this is a direct order. We have 90 seconds before this whole sector goes up. Brooklyn's hand tightened on a lead she held. The adult dogs beside her were trained to load into vehicles, trained to follow commands, but they'd heard something too. The puppies. Their pack. Their family. What happened next would be talked about for years in military canine circles. The moment when training met something deeper than training. The moment when obedience met love. Maverick moved first. The 65-pound German Shepherd jerked the lead from Brooklyn's hand with absolute conviction and bolted back toward the flames. Stella followed. Then Dakota, limping gait forgotten, moving faster than Brooklyn had seen him move in 2 years. One by one, the adult dogs pulled free, turned, and ran Dot not away from the fire. Into it. No. Brooklyn's scream tore from her throat. She lunged forward, but hands grabbed her shoulders. Sergeant Tyler Williams, his face streaked with ash. You can't, he choked out. Brooklyn, you can't go in there. 60 seconds. That's what they had before the fuel tanks in Hangar 6 would ignite and turn the entire compound into a crematorium. The smoke was so thick now that Brooklyn couldn't see anything beyond 15 feet. The heat was a physical presence, pressing against her skin. She could hear the fire roaring, a sound like 1,000 jet engines screaming at once. And underneath it, barely audible, the desperate barking of dogs who'd chosen to die rather than leave their young behind. Something inside. Brooklyn broke, or maybe it finally came together. She ripped free from Tyler's grip, grabbed a fire blanket from the nearest truck, and ran. She heard shouting behind her, heard Commander Price ordering her back, but it all faded because there was only one thing that mattered now. 17 puppies and 17 heroes who'd refused to abandon them. The heat hit her like a wall. The smoke choked her, filled her lungs with poison. She dropped her hands and knees, the fire blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and crawled forward using muscle memory and prayer. The backup kennels were 40 yards northeast. 40 yards that felt like 40 miles. She found them by sound. First, the frantic barking, the high-pitched yelping of terrified puppies, the deeper growls of adult dogs trying to do the impossible. Through the smoke, she saw Maverick using his body to shield 3 puppies while he tried to drag a 4th by the scruff. Stella had somehow gotten 2 kennels open and was herding puppies toward what she thought was safety. But the exit was blocked. Dakota stood at the door, barking with everything he had. A lighthouse in the storm, Brooklyn didn't think. There wasn't time. She grabbed puppies, shoved them into her jacket, under the fire blanket, moved with speed and strength. She didn't know she possessed. The adult dogs seemed to understand, seemed to shift their efforts to match hers. 30 seconds. She had 7 puppies. The adult dogs had rounded up the others, but they were trapped as a support beam groaned overhead. Brooklyn looked at Maverick, at Stella, at Dakota, and the 14 others who'd stayed. Their eyes met hers through the smoke, not pleading, not afraid, just trusting. "I can't carry you all," she whispered, her voice breaking. The explosion that cut her off wasn't Hangar 6. It was the fire suppression system in the backup kennels, triggered manually by someone who'd just violated every safety protocol. Water erupted from overhead sprinklers with enough force to knock Brooklyn to her knees. Steam filled the air, mixing with smoke. But the flames faltered. Through the mist, she saw them. The entire remaining canine unit. 20 soldiers and Commander Price himself, forming a human chain from the kennels to the evac zone. No one had given the order. They just come. Because that's what you do when family is in danger. The evacuation took 8 seconds. 8 seconds of passing puppies hand to hand, of guiding smoke-blind dogs through debris, of Brooklyn emerging last with Dakota in her arms and Maverick pressed against her leg. They cleared the compound with 11 seconds to spare. Hangar 6 went up like the sun had fallen to Earth, a blast of light and heat that illuminated the entire airfield. Brooklyn collapsed to her knees in a safe zone, puppies tumbling around her, adult dogs pressing close, everyone breathing hard, everyone alive. Commander Price stood over her, his face unreadable. In the military, what she'd done was technically court-martial worthy, disobeying direct orders, risking human lives for animals. He helped her to her feet, looked at the 17 puppies now being checked by the veterinary team, looked at the 17 adult dogs who'd refused to leave them behind, and then he looked at Brooklyn. "I didn't see anything," he said quietly, "except the bravest damn thing I've witnessed in 20 years of service. The puppies all survived. Every single one. Within 2 years, 14 of them would graduate from advanced training programs. 3 would go on to save human lives in active combat zones. They'd all carry a special notation in their service records. Bagram fire survivors. The real story was about 17 dogs who'd been trained to obey, to follow orders, to value the mission above all else, who looked at fire and certain death and decided that some things matter more than training. Some things are worth running toward instead of away from, because loyalty doesn't calculate the odds. Love doesn't wait for permission. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. Brooklyn still serves with military working dogs. Maverick retired last year and lives with her now, in a house with a big yard and a framed photo on the wall. 17 puppies and 17 heroes, taken 3 days after the fire. Everyone healthy. Everyone home on quiet nights when Maverick dreams and his paws twitch with old memories. Brooklyn sometimes wonders what went through his mind in that moment when he pulled free and ran back into the flames. She never know for sure, but she thinks maybe it was the same thing that went through hers when she followed him. Not today, not on my watch, not these. Thank you for being here. If it moved you, leave a comment below telling me about a time someone showed up for you when it mattered most. And if you're new here, subscribe, because there are so many more stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I want to share every single one of them with you.